We still do 7 NUFC Matters shows for free a week. But if you want to support the channel, there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast or video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications option. Hit the thanks button to buy a super sticker. You can do this on the live chat too. You can also join our Patreon page or buy us a coffee at the link in all of our video descriptions below. We are also looking for sponsors. If you want our latest advertising rates and how you can get involved, then email John at nufcmatters1892@gmail.com. Thanks for watching.
Critics attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not true.
And it feels alright when they come and say to you, you're the only thing that makes us all believe.
Welcome along to another episode of NUFC Matters. Those were the days, and it is intriguingly titled Those That Got Away, the ones that got away. George, tell us more.
Well, they're all people who came into the Newcastle side as youngsters with a great future foretold. And some of them did quite well at first, but then slowly disappeared and were either transferred, asked for transfers, or just disappeared altogether. And some of them were really good players. Some of them, as it happens, are people I knew as either as friends, and one or two of them I actually played with. So it has a quite a poignant feel for me because as I say, I know most of these lads in one way or another. And some of them were outstanding, foretold by many that these were going to be the next somebody or the next this, that, or the other. And unfortunately, for one way or another, it didn't happen. But they were still good players, and some of them still had good careers, but not with Newcastle United, sadly. And we all know the wish to get Geordies into our team. I mean, the big one is John Hall's wish to have 11 Geordies on the pitch, and wouldn't we all love that? But it's never going to happen. But there's no reason why it shouldn't be a dream. Well, these were kids who could possibly, if they'd just thought a bit or changed direction and other things influence them, they might well have been Newcastle heroes. But as it happens, they gave what they could, and that was the end of it. They moved on. So that's what I want to talk about today.
Okay, George, over to you. Who's first up?
Well, first up's Alan Suddick, a really talented player who came into the side, came to Newcastle as a 14-year-old, and he's much younger than me, but they were still working on my knee in the treatment room, so I was still hearing the gossip in the treatment room about who was coming in. And it was noticeable. Everybody in the treatment room, Ted Hughes, the juniors manager, one or two other coaches, Benny Craig, were talking about this lad who was born in Chesley Street, but by the time he came into Newcastle, he lived in Whitley Bay. And his move to Whitley Bay was interesting. You see, he was a keen ice skater, and very good ice skater. And his parents moved to Whitley Bay to be nearer the ice rink. And at 14, when he signed schoolboy forms for Newcastle, a couple of weeks after he signed those forms, he and his partner won the British Junior Ice Skating Championships. And he eventually married that lady as it became his wife, his partner in life, never mind on the ice rink. So he was talented in many ways. The thing that intrigued me was they talked about him, how tricky he was, how fast he was, quite good in the air. But the one person who used to have sort of a tut when we were talking about him was Ted Hughes, who used to manage the junior side, and there he is scoring against Leeds United. And Ted Hughes always used to shake his head and tut a little bit, and Benny Craig or somebody would say to him, "What's the matter, Ted? What's wrong?" And Ted Hughes used to say, "Well, he's good, but he won't do what he's told," which is quite interesting. Anyway, he came into the juniors and very quickly into the Northern Intermediate League side, and at 16 signed Football League forms, like most of them did in those days at that time. However, the big decision for him was he had to decide: was it ice skating, was it football? And he chose the football route because I think he could see he had the possibility to make a name for himself in the football quicker than he could in the ice skating. And that's true. I mean, his first couple of seasons as a teenager, he was absolutely outstanding. I mean, he scored some beautiful goals, laid some good goals on for other people. He was a very, very good as a winger on the right wing, and equally playing through the channels as a midfielder, attacking midfielder, as we call him in these days. In those days, he was an inside forward, and he was, as I say, scored some tremendous goals. I think in his second season, I think it was 62. I think 62, 63. He just missed being top scorer, and well, that I can remember how people in the Gallagher corner, for example, were absolutely delighted to see this lad getting on, and he was certainly hitting the headlines. And the very next season, of course, they pushed him into the England under 23s, and he played twice for the under 23s, and everybody thought it was only a matter of time before Alan Suddick got to the full England side and was knocking spots off everything in the Football League. And then slowly but surely, it was about 63. The hints, his form dipped badly, and the hints were that he wanted to leave. And there were never any concrete reason for it, but some thought that one of the problems was his girlfriend, that she'd moved to Blackpool to continue the skating with a new partner. And Alan suddenly decided that's where he wanted to be. And Bob Stokoe, of course, was the Blackpool manager then, who we knew very well, Geordie. And he persisted and persisted, but Newcastle kept knocking him back for obvious reasons. But in the finish, Suddick turned the thing on its head by asking for a transfer, something which players nowadays wouldn't think of because they've got so many bonuses attached to it. But in those days, it wasn't unusual for unhappy players to actually ask for a transfer. And Alan Suddick did exactly that. And no surprise to anybody in Newcastle that he ended up playing at Blackpool, continued his career at Blackpool. And good career it was. He picked up his game very quickly when he got to Blackpool. And for them, he played 144 games, scored 45 goals. And when he went to Blackpool, he played another 310 with 73 goals. So he still had another an excellent career. But many people thought, and I think they're probably right, that the kerfuffle in leaving and between Newcastle and Blackpool and his playing in the under 23s probably cost him his international career, because he was never the huge star at Blackpool that he was going to be and already had become at Newcastle. And so he ended up, as I said, having a great career with them, but didn't take his international career any further. After 300 games at Blackpool, he went on to Stoke City for a season, but only because of injury. He only managed 9 games and 2 goals. To get him fit again, he had a loan spell at Southport before coming back to join Bury in the old Division 2 in those days and play a season for them of 34 games and 2 goals. And he moved over to a division down to Barrow and had a couple of seasons with them. And then finally went player manager to Lancaster City in the non-league to follow a coaching career. A coaching career which didn't last very long because he returned with his wife to his former sport, ice skating, and became an ice skating coach along with his wife, and finished his professional career as a ice skating coach rather than a football coach. Alan Suddick was when he came into the team, his first couple of seasons, there's no question people thought he was going to be there for a long time and be the next local hero, but that it didn't work out like that is a bit sad. But on the other hand, he people make choices, and he made his choice that he wanted to go to Blackpool to be where his better half was, and that's understandable. But it had an impact on his career, which was a bit sad, and from afar, from Newcastle, it looked like he'd made a huge mistake, and certainly he'd never even looked like getting near an international call-up like he would have done it when he was at Newcastle. So that's Alan Suddick. The next one is another talented young Geordie called Keith Dyson. Now, Keith Dyson, unfortunately, came into the fold. Well, as a 14-year-old, like we all schoolboys did, and as he gradually made his way through the junior teams, and he wasn't long in the junior setup before he was in the Central League team, and then people were talking about him as a first-team player. By the time he was 16, 17, without any doubt, and he come in with a reputation of being extremely quick, good in the air, big, strong lad, and something which nowadays is rare, a very, very talented player on either foot, left or right foot, and he could hit the ball as hard with one as he could the other. And because he was quick and big and able to attack from either side, and he was equally able to go down the middle, he suddenly found himself being compared with people like Jackie Milburn and people like that, which is never a very good thing for young people to get a sort of title stuck around their neck as quickly as that. But he was good. He was exceptional, and in season 69, he broke into the first team and was just dynamite. Scored some really beautiful long-range goals from left and right, and was comfortable through the middle as he was down the wing. Good in the air because he was a nice, tall, strong lad, and he looked set for incredible career. And at I think it was just 19 when he got first under 23 international cap. Well, first and only under 23 international cap, and things looked rosy for him, absolutely rosy, it was fast becoming the darling of the Gallagher corner. That as soon as he got the ball, you could hear the murmur in the crowd, wondering what Keith was going to do, and that sometimes was something quite incredible. But lo and behold, after a great season, well, nearly 2 seasons. Rumours abounded that he was part of a transfer deal, and that got everybody a bit upset. And the transfer deal was a big one. Blackpool again, same team. Stan Seymour wanted a little man called Tony Green in the Newcastle team, and tried all ways to buy Tony Green. And it looked like the deal was off until towards the end of the deal, Blackpool suggested that if we threw Keith Dyson into the deal for them, we could have Tony Green. And that's what happened. He became the make-weight in the big transfer of Tony Green to Newcastle United. And well, we saw what impact Tony Green would have for a couple of years. What a talented player he was, and Keith went in the opposite direction to Blackpool, who was still managed by Bob Stokoe, and he went to Blackpool and had 2-3 excellent seasons at Blackpool. Couple of times being their top scorer. There he is, yeah, and 94 games, and he played 76 games for us, 32 goals, and for Blackpool he played 94 games and 36 goals. So his scoring record with them was equally good as it was with us. His career slowed down a little bit because he got a bad knee injury, and lots of people think that's what slowed his international career down, because he never really fully recovered from that knee injury, and it definitely slowed him down, which was quite sad, because his pace and his ability to shoot either side were what made him dangerous. And once he slowed down, he wasn't quite so dangerous. So he had another good season, and he ended up dropping down to Lancaster City in non-league, where he played a season. And then after a season at Lancaster, he ended up going to America, to Cleveland Cobras, and had a season there with them. But that didn't work out very well. He had 14 games, scored 7 goals, which was great. But his knee injury kept coming back, and so he eventually returned to England, but as a manager, and he went to manage Leicester City for about 3 years. And when you read what he did at Leicester City, he did a lot of good work at Leicester as manager, coach with Leicester City, and perhaps sad that the injuries changed his playing career, but he forged quite a nice start of a nice career in management. Then, lo and behold, he had a brother who was in business, and the brother was in security business, and they set up this big company in the Midlands, and Keith became part of that and disappeared from football altogether and went into business. But his start, everybody liked what they saw. Keith Dyson, his pace, his heading ability, the fact that he could shoot both sides, made him quite an attractive footballer, particularly to fans, because he was exciting. I mean, you never know what these titles do to people, but as I say, when he came in, people were talking about the next Jackie Milburn, which I think was a mistake. But on the other hand, he was that talented. It's just a pity that we didn't see the talent a little bit longer. And it was Stan Seymour's wheeler dealing for Tony Green that took Keith away from us, and that was quite sad. But as I say, he still had quite a good career in football. Well, not the career that we particularly wanted. So he's another one that that got away, I'm afraid. So that's Keith Dyson. The next one is Ken Hale. Alan Foggen. Alan Foggen. Now, for people to come into the first team and have titles thrust on them, Alan Foggen, I recollect, had one of the most heavy titles thrust on him when he came into the team. Another lad from West Pelton in County Durham, and very athletic. He'd won English schools championship at 100 meters and 200 meters, and which clearly meant he was very fit, very athletic, and came to Newcastle and signed for the club in '67. The coach in that part of the scout in that part of Durham was a lad called Joe McCarthy, who was a very nice guy who always kept in touch with the players he brought to the club. And because there's Foggen with the FACup team, which he was part of, and Alan Foggen came into the side with some people, particularly in the press, labeling him the Geordie George Best, which, God, what a title to give anybody. I mean, but he was devastatingly fast, really, really tricky, very hard to shift off the ball, and quite capable of going either way, left or right, even though he was principally left-sided player. But he was equally capable of going down the right side as well. And it wasn't like, as soon as he got into the first team, it was clear he was going to cause a stir. And he got in 67. He made his first debut as a teenager, and had two great seasons, scoring a lot of goals and cementing himself in the first team. So much so that Joe Harvey included him all the time in the FACup squad, and what an impact he made there. And those of us that were around at the time remember particularly the final at Újpest in Hungary, when he scored two of the goals in the final. It made the aggregate 6-2, which was, nobody had expected Newcastle United to do that. But Alan Foggen was an important part of that, and added a lot when he came into that team, and did very well, and was the darling of the Gallagher. I can remember people sort of oohing and on every time he played the ball. And one or two games he played that I remember vividly was one particularly against Aston Villa, and I think we beat them 4-2, and we were struggling at 2-2 until Alan took the game by the scruff of the neck, and he scored another 2 goals to make it a hat trick for him, and just turn Aston Villa inside out in a matter of 10 minutes. That's the kind of impact he could have, which made him, sort of the darling of the Gallagher, as it were. Sadly, after the FACup victory, he seemed to disappear from the scene. He was playing Central League and occasionally getting in the first team, but not very often, and was struggling after. By the time we got a season after the FACup, he was hardly picturing in the first team. So it was very little surprise when suddenly somebody came and made a bid for him, and it was Cardiff City that took Alan Foggen away from Newcastle United, which was, though I remember being on the Gallagher, how people were so disappointed. They thought they had their Geordie George Best, because he was able to sparkle in that way and turn the game on his head, but it didn't work out. So he ended up going to Cardiff City, where he had a season and a half. only played 17 games, scored 1 goal, and looked like his career was going to disappear altogether. But suddenly it was announced that he was coming back to the northeast, and he came back to Middlesbrough, where from 72 to 76 had several good seasons, and that's in there, yeah. And his hair was distinctive. You can see he had a shock of dark hair, which was his characteristic. Anyway, he had good seasons at Middlesbrough, 115 games with them, and 55 goals, which is not a bad record, and was still good to watch on his day when he was playing, and he that's typical Alan with the hair on his shoulders, and so he had a good spell at Middlesbrough. He then decided, having had some sort of fallout at Middlesbrough, he would go to America. And I have to say that last photograph made an indication of why his career was slowing down, because that's not the picture of an athletic footballer. he looks as though he's had too many pies to me. Anyway, he went to America. He went to Hartford. He went to Rochester, and then, lo and behold, out of the blue, came back to the UK and ended up at Manchester United, would you believe? And everybody thought, wow, this is something. Well, he played 3 games for them and was very quickly dispatched to come to where, but Sunderland. So he ended up doing the triangle of Newcastle, Middlesbrough, Sunderland, and had a season there, hardly played a game. I think he had about 10 games and 2 goals. And then suddenly in 77, back end of 77 season, he ended up going to Southend, where he played 22 games and didn't score any goals. And then lo and behold, he came back to the Northeast and went on loan to Hartlepool United. So he really was collecting all the Northeast clubs, all the clubs around where he lived, where he was born, and then drifted into non-league locally, first with Concert for a season, and then another season with Whitley Bay, where he didn't really make much of an impact there, and his career just slowly disappeared. And I think he ended up working for one of the local breweries. Alan Foggen was an enigma. He really was. Had the potential to be one of the greats, but it just never transpired, and could never get to the bottom of why that was. What is interesting to me personally is that while I was putting this program together, we were the first team in Newcastle were playing Wolverhampton Wanderers, and I happened to be in the Tyneside Irish Centre with all the boys and girls from NUFC Matters, and who should be in the bar but Alan Foggen. So what an opportunity to go and say hello. Well, and it was interesting to see how interested he was in the current football scene, his opinions on current players and all the rest of it. And it was good to see he still loved his football and was very much interested in Newcastle United. What was also interesting was the shock of black hair is still there. He hasn't lost any of it, says me, who lost all his 20 years ago. Except that the black is now streaked with grey. But still good to have a chat with him and stand while he was having a drink or two with his friends, and good to know that he's still very much likes and is deep interest in Newcastle United. So that was Alan Foggen, and of all the players that I've mentioned in this set, the one that I thought had the potential to be the Tyneside hero was Alan Foggen, but it just didn't happen for a variety of reasons. However, I go back to that picture you just showed, Steve, of him in the Middlesbrough shirt, and that didn't look like a very athletic footballer to me, but that may be my jaundiced view of the world. So now we move on to another possible Geordie hero from Ashington. That's Ken Hale. Ken Hale was a guy I got to know reasonably well because we played a few times together. Usually when he was on his way back from injury to the first team, and I was playing in the playing in the third or the fourth team, Newcastle A or Newcastle B, and he was given a run out to test his injury. He was born in Blythe, actually, but his family moved to Ashington later on. He was these papers call him an inside forward. I think in modern day language he'd be an attacking midfielder, a number 10 or a number 8. But he was a very talented player and became part of one of the Newcastle United Youth Cup winning sides, and will be well known to anybody who followed the youth team in those days, which was winning everything. The other reason that I got to know him quite well is that when Newcastle won the FA Youth Cup trophy, they got a challenge from Chelsea, who didn't play in the Youth Cup that year because they had won everything in the south and Newcastle had won everything in the north. So they thought it would be a good idea to have a challenge between the two youth sides. And so a party was organised to go to Stamford Bridge. And as well as the team, Ted Hughes, who managed all the juniors, including the ends, included one or two youngsters like myself, Charlie Appleby from South Shields and George Dalton from Forest Hall. Those of us who were sort of on schoolboy forms and starting to play in the junior teams, to get us acquainted with the system and get used to who we're playing with. And on that trip, I spent a couple of hours sitting next to Ken on the bus, and it was quite nice to get his experiences, which were not dissimilar to me. Play for the school, play for the town, play for the county, etc. And what a nice guy he was. He was nice. Anyway, we went to Stamford Bridge, and they won the challenge against Chelsea, which was no mean feat, because in the Chelsea team, in goal was Peter Bonetti. Centre forward was their big centre forward who played at the first team. And Jimmy Greaves was alongside him as well. So it was a fantastic side. Frank Blunstone was on the left wing, who was an England left winger for a little while. So it was a good side, two good sides playing out, and it was quite a nice trip. So Ken was all part of that, and he wasn't long before he went right through the juniors, played some excellent stuff in Central League and then into the first team. And having labels, I didn't pick up any particular label in the Gallagher corner about Ken, but he was well liked. A very strong player, not very tall. I think he was he was 5'8" where but very stocky and very strong, very low centre of gravity, a bit like Peter Beardsley, but not of the quality of Peter, obviously. But it looked like he had a glowing career ahead of him, and was in his second season of first team. he was banging the goals in for free. But then suddenly, after about 40 games and 15 goals, Newcastle decided to sell him. They got a bid in from Coventry City, and that was it. Ken was on his way to Coventry City, and people just wondered if that was the right move. Would Newcastle regret that? Well, as it happens, it didn't backfire on Newcastle like some deals have. But he went to Coventry City, and I know from personally he was not necessarily happy about the move, but he was pragmatic enough to know that if he turned it down, he might not get another professional contract. And so he went to Coventry City and had 3 or 4 good seasons there, playing 99 games and scoring 27 goals. And in 66 rather, the World Cup year, he was sold to Oxford United and went and played at Oxford for a couple of seasons, 66 games and 14 goals. And then lo and behold, in 69, decided to come home to the North East and played for Darlington, played 170 odd games for Darlington, scoring 35 goals. And then he ended his playing career at Halifax Town. He played 52 games for them, scoring 14 goals. So in a career which started at Newcastle, he ended up with 420 professional appearances, and that's him in the Coventry side, and scoring 84 goals, which is not bad. And then lo and behold, and suddenly in 73, he came back to Darlington as player manager, and stayed at Darlington for 2 years, and then moved on to Hartlepool for the next 2 years. That picture is something that Ken Hill was involved in outside of football, providing opportunities for young Africans to get into professional life in the UK. And this was something I think his partner was particularly involved in, and that included getting into football. So I thought that was a very, very early stab at opening the doors of professional football to people from other continents. So Ken Hale ended his football time at Hartlepool in 76, and had a good football career, but not the career perhaps we would have wanted, or he might have wanted, because he was another one that when he got into the first team, he looked like he was there to stay. He wasn't. He looked like a really talented player that was going to hang around for quite a while. So that's Ken Hale. Next one is Albert Franks. That's Albert just before he passed on, poor soul. When he was living in Scotland. Albert Franks was one of the players that came straight from a local team, Bolton Colliery Welfare, and straight into the first team without anything in between. He was regarded as incidentally, that older picture of Albert, he was 81 there, which is the year he passed. Anyway, it says on these papers that he was a wing half, which is modern terms would be a defensive midfielder, a number 6, if you like. But he also, when he started, was a very, very talented centre half, we used to call him. In fact, talking about labels, locally and in the Gallagher corner particularly, he was the Geordie Frank Brennan, because Frank Brennan had been our stalwart centre half for many, many years. And lots of people, not just press, but coaches and others with opinions about football saw Albert Franks as the next Frank Brennan, which is quite a thing, quite a title to go to be named after a Scottish international who's seen 3 cup finals, etc. But he was that good as a defender, and people were astounded that he could come from Bolton Colliery in the Wearside League 1 week to be centre half in the First Division the week after, and that's how it went. And he was excellent, strong, robust, which I think came from his time in the Wearside League, which was a pretty hard league in those days, and could block the defence. However, he had one failing, and it was disastrous in many ways. Once he got turned, he was very slow at getting turned. He was a bit like comparing a rubber inflatable turn to the SO Northumbria turn. And once Albert was turned, he was in difficulty. He seemed to have great difficulty recovering pace once he was facing his own goal, and it was that inability to turn in that way that really took him out of the centre back position and back to what they call in here wing half position, the defensive midfield position. And again, he had the football, he had the strength, but he was just short of that yard of pace. That so much so that when teams played, once they knew he was in the team, they played off Albert. There's no question about that. And he had 2 reasonable seasons, but then was in and out until 1960, and that's in that's him in the first team squad wearing the Charlie Mitten strips. Those of you who can't remember, Charlie Mitten was our manager, and Charlie designed those strips with the black shorts with the white rings around the bottom of the legs and the black and white straight tops on the socks. Beautiful strip and nice to wear, and the V-neck collars were everybody loved. But the problem was that the socks were very difficult to wear because of those black and white stripes. They weren't made in one piece; they were made in 2, and where they were joined, they made a ridge. So when you used your tyres to tie your socks up, you ended up with a ring around your leg off the hem on the sock. But never mind, that's another issue. But Albert got into that team regularly and played played 72 games in very short time and scored 4 goals, usually headers from corners, because he was good in the air. He had good ability in the air. And in the 59-60 season, Newcastle received an offer for him from Glasgow Rangers, and they took it. And Albert Franks went to Glasgow Rangers and seemed set for a glowing career in Scotland, but unfortunately, he got into the Rangers team, but didn't last very long. Again, people found out his fact that he was slow on the turn, and even in Scotland, that was a problem for him. And he only played 6 games for Rangers, and by 1960, middle of 61, they sold him to Greenock Morton in the first division in Scotland, and Greenock took him, and he seemed to settle there. But again, after a season in which he got the run around a couple of times, he played 13 games, scored 2 goals, but within halfway through that second season, he was sold to Lincoln City in the English third division. And seemed to find his level. He was really well liked at Lincoln City, and he played 60 games for them and 5 goals. But then after a couple of good seasons, he got an offer to go back to Scotland to the Queen of the South, and went to Queen of the South for a season and played 20-odd games for them, scoring 2 goals. At the end of that season in 64, he went into non-league in England and became player manager of Scarborough, and that's where he ended his playing, his contacts with football. As I say, Albert Franks, I didn't know personally, but I seen him around the place while I was in and out getting my still struggling to get my knee sorted. Everybody liked Albert, but the elephant in the room when you were talking about playing was always the fact that he couldn't turn, and he got roasted time and time again by the opposition because he was slow on the turn. Otherwise, a very, very good player, a good defender, did lots of good things, but yeah, you know, the pace on the turn was his downfall, and that was quite sad because, as I say, he played for Bolton Colliery one week and straight into Newcastle first team the next, which is some jump, and didn't disgrace himself and stayed in the team for a while. But slowly but surely, this issue about his pace caught up with him, and Newcastle moved him on. So Albert Franks, nice guy, not quite the footballer that we thought he was going to be. The next one is an interesting character, Reg Evans. I struggled to get. That's him in the team picture, and struggled to get individual pictures of Reg. He was part of the Youth Cup winning team. He was the left winger in that team, regarded as a really, really talented left winger, and everybody thought that here was the new Bobby Mitchell, as almost. Well, he was different kind of player to Bobby Mitchell because he relied on pace and as well as trickery, where pace wasn't something that people remember Bobby Mitchell about. What they remember is his trickery. Anyway, he came to the club having been lived in Concert and played for Concert Juniors, and went straight into the senior junior squad. That's the nursery team who played in the Northern Intermediate League and managed by Ted Hughes, and became an instant success there. And I remember at various training sessions that how he and the coaches talk about Reg Evans, how much they thought about him, and felt that it wouldn't be long before he got to the first team, especially after they won the Youth Cup. He was in 58, after the cup. He got into the Newcastle team a couple of times. The biggest problem for Reg was that the competition for that left wing spot, there was one or two people, but the one that was the biggest competition was a young man called John Mitten, who was the son of the manager, Charlie Mitten. So Reg had two opponents there, son and father. And I know a lot of us that were at the club at the time thought that having the son of the manager as your competition wasn't the best thing to have. And there was another son called John Mitten who played inside forward. He also was valiant to get into the team, but he wasn't as successful as John, and that was Reg's problem. That's a very old picture of Reg, which I didn't realise it was him. He went to Charlton, and that's one of the pictures that they took at Charlton. He played 4 games for the first team, played very well, but in 1959, the season 59-60, Newcastle got an offer for him from Charlton Athletic, and Reg decided to go, which surprised us all because he was very much a local lad, and couldn't, he didn't seem like somebody who would be attracted by the bright lights of London. But there off he went and had signed for Charlton. But his game just deteriorated there. Whether he was homesick or what, nobody ever could say. But in season from 59 to 60, he only played 2 games for them, scored 1 goal, and then just disappeared off the scene of the first team. Played reserve team for a while, had a couple of periods on loan in non-league in London, but his career in the first division just came to a sudden end, and he was lost to football. Basically, nobody knew where he was. And suddenly he turned up back in the northeast, not playing football, but working for Newcastle Breweries and the old breweries on Barrack Road. And eventually became the tour manager. So if ever you went on a tour of Newcastle Breweries in those days, it was Reg Evans that would take you around. But he just disappeared from football circles. And of all the players I'm mentioning today who I got to know, it was a huge disappointment to see what happened to Reg, because he certainly was a very talented player, and there was no question he would get in the first team, and he did. The only trouble is he didn't stay there, which was quite sad. So he, as I say, ended up in Newcastle, but not at Newcastle United, but at the Breweries, being the tour manager, and did that until he retired. Nice guy, but as I say, the other thing about Reg when he was a teenager, of course, he wasn't just a nice guy. He was a good-looking guy and very popular lad. So, but again, a Geordie who was expected to do great and just disappeared basically, but ended up in a very laudable Geordie occupation of being the tour guide at Newcastle Breweries. The next player is someone who, again, came into the team in strange circumstances. George Heslop, a defender, centre half, and there he is playing for Manchester City. He came from Dudley in Northumberland, and played for Dudley Welfare, and another one that played for Dudley Welfare one Saturday, and the following Saturday played for Newcastle in the first division. And nice lad, got to know him quite well. We played the lower teams a few times together, in the B team and the A team, Northern Alliance, Northern Combination. But it was quite clear George was talented, and was looked like he'd be settled in the first team for a very, very long time. And in season 61-62, he played 27 games and played very well, and looked like he was set for a very, very great career at Newcastle United. And lo and behold, on beginning of season 62, Newcastle got a bid from Everton for him, and he went to Everton, and people couldn't understand why. We were struggling for a replacement for the likes of Brennan and Stokoe, etc. And George Heslop seemed to be the ideal candidate. But here he was going to Everton, He was Everton for 2 or 3 years, 2 or 3 seasons, but only played 11 games. So it was no surprise that in 65 he moved on. And he moved on to Manchester City, where he started what was the best part of his career. He played 162 games for Manchester City, scoring 2 goals. And he at the height of his career, there was no doubt that George Heslop was seriously considered as an international centre half. He didn't get into the England setup, but certainly made a name for himself at Manchester City. And he played until the end of 72 when he was offered a loan spell at Cape Town City in South Africa. And he took it because it was financially a big opportunity, and he fancied the shot at playing football in another country, and he made quite a job of it. He played the whole season and did very well and scored half a dozen goals. And at the end of 72, 73, he came back to the Northwest and went to play at Bury Town in the second division, and again he played a whole season, 37 games, no goals, and was very popular there. But George was, wherever he played, he was popular. And in 77 he moved on to Macclesfield, where he played half a season and ended up as their manager. And he went into non-league management after that, into Northwich, Victoria, becoming then he ended his football career and became a pub manager of a City Gates public house in Hyde, Manchester, and became a popular main host in the city of Manchester. And he's so popular that when Manchester City formed their Garden of Memorial, George Heslop was included in that, and that's the way people felt about it. He just was a nice guy. He had a very short illness in 2006. It was basically cancer, and quite sadly disappeared off the scene very quickly indeed. So George Heslop, who in my opinion was the Geordie defender that got away, which it would have been nice if he'd stayed where he was, but demonstrated at Manchester City he was a really talented footballer. So that's the end of George Heslop. We now come into one of the biggest enigmas of them all, a centre forward called Carl Wilson. Carl Wilson, there he is in his one and only game for Newcastle United. And he came from Concept, Dells Lane Juniors, and he was another one that bypassed the lower ranks of the junior teams to go straight into the Northern Intermediate League team. And he was quite a character. He came in and you can't see much of him there in that picture, but one of the things that made him stand out was he was so big. And there he is playing for one of his continental teams. And actually with a name like Carl Wilson, when I was researching this and looking for pictures, of course, I couldn't get rid of all the pictures of Carl Wilson from the Beach Boys. That's where all the pictures were. But never mind, Carl came into the Northern Intermediate League side and was an instant hit. Big guy, very, very strong. His father was an ex-pro at Southend, and when he finished playing football, became a personal trainer, must be one of the unique ones in those days, and had quite a good business. And so physical fitness and all of that was in Carl's DNA. So when Carl stood beside us with his 6'2" frame and took his shirt off, he had muscles where none of us even realised you were supposed to have muscles. That's how strong he was. But he was a very, very quick-tempered character. Nice guy, but gosh, when he lost it, he lost it. And we all thought someday he would make the first team, but he did it a lot quicker than we imagined, and it stemmed from an incident in a game we were playing at Hunters Moor. Newcastle Ends were playing Hull City Ends at Hunters Moor, and it was a good game. It was going our way, but from the touchline you could hear Ted Hughes, the manager, who used to be the head teacher at St Aloysius School. It seemed to be every time Carl made a pass, got the ball, you could hear Ted Hughes saying, "Oh, Wilson, you've done this," and "Oh, Wilson, you've done that." And even, I've got to say, even I thought, well, what the devil's that about, you know? Anyway, it got towards the middle of the second half, and we were winning relatively easily. And Carl was in the centre circle in our half of the field, and he made an attempt to kill the ball, and it bounced off him. And above all the other people in the crowd, you could hear Ted Hughes say, "Oh, Wilson, you're hopeless." And Carl Wilson took the ball, trapped it, placed it in front of him, and hit it as hard as he could, but towards our goal, and scored a peach in the top corner of our goal from just inside our half. I mean, it was unbelievable. To say that there was ructions on afterwards is putting it mildly. And we thought, well, that's the end of Carl. But it wasn't. After the game, we heard that Carl and his father had gone to St James's Park to see Charlie Mitten, and they'd gone to see the manager to complain about Ted Hughes. But by the time they came out, Carl had signed a professional contract, and on the Saturday was actually leading the line for the first team. And you know, we knew he would get there, but we thought, goodness gracious, what a way to do it. He played his game. It was nondescript. He didn't come near to scoring, and to be brutally honest, looked out of his depth, which is quite sad. So he got that game and hung around till the end of that season, when just before the end of the season he was transferred, and he was transferred to Gateshead. He went into non-league to Gateshead, where he stayed for a season and played 18 games and scored 5 goals. He then moved on to Doncaster Rovers in 61, played 18 games and 2 goals. He then had half a season at Millwall in 60 till 62, played 15 games and only scored once. And then he went on to the continent, Sparta Rotterdam, and apparently these were the manager there was an old colleague of his father, and give Carl a contract at Sparta Rotterdam. He played 12 times for the first team and scored 6 goals. And then he went to Germany, Schwarz Essen, and only played half a dozen games for them, and his contract was terminated. And he came home to the UK, and was last in terms of football. I heard he was actually part of the coaching team at Concert in the Wearside League, and that's the last I heard of Carl. But when he came into the team, he was so physically better than us, looked so physically better and more confident. It seemed inevitable he would end up in the first team. Well, he did, but it was short and sweet, and from absolutely peculiar circumstances. And I think that finishes our teams. It's worth saying that the one thing that bothers me about local lads getting into the team, we've had, even since the takeover, the lads we've had in the team now, Sean Longstaff particular, and his brother Matty when he was here. But Sean, in my opinion, played some great stuff for Newcastle, worked his heart out. And yet, if one bad game, and the internet was always full of the most derogatory comments you could invent, which I find is quite sad. We're now seeing currently the same thing happening to young Lewis Smiley. And my plea to people out there is, for God's sake, give the Geordie heroes a chance, or we're never going to have another one. So give them a chance is my plea. So I hope that little trip down memory lane into players who might have done it and didn't quite do it was worth listening to, and who knows what we'll come up with next.
Great stuff, Judge. Thanks, as always, for your homework. Wonderful stuff. Great to listen to it. And look forward to the next one. Take care.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for watching, everybody. Do appreciate it.
A big thanks to all our sponsors, Skips and Bins. You can find them at their website, skipsandbins.com. Contact them at www.skipsandbins.com/contact. Say hello to low-cost waste disposal with pay-as-you-go and contract waste management. A big thanks to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. You can find them at their website, mrvickies.co.uk, email info@mrvickies.co.uk, or telephone 01768 210 102. Thanks to our fanzine sponsor, United Group Travel. There are no strangers on our tours, just friends you haven't met yet. 2-crew driver and courier, local family company, 3-star plus quality hotels and no interchanges. Hot and cold snacks and drinks available on the coach, all excursions included. Their website, unitedgrouptravel.com, email beverly.ugtl@gmail.com, telephone 01670 632 460 or 0791 666 4174. Just £30 per person deposit. Thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the technical side of things. And if you like listening to us as a podcast, you can go to Sports Social Podcast Network or to iTunes, Spotify, or other podcast providers. If you want to support the show, then hit the subscribe button. It's free. We do 7 shows a week. Hit the little thumb up under the video, which is the like button, or click share to share to your social media. You can also join the channel on YouTube by hitting the join button for as little as $1.99 a month. If you want to become an NUFC Matters member, you can go to nufcmatterspodcast.co.uk. It's a £25 one-off fee. You get your pen, you get your badge, a key ring, you get your beer mat and your fridge magnet and your membership card, nufcmatterspodcast.co.uk for that. And we have an event early next year, 13th of February 2026, an evening with Beardsley, Waddle and Gascoigne takes place at the Tyne Theatre and Opera House. To buy your tickets for that event, go to the box office 0191 243 1171 or Tyne Theatre and Opera House.uk.